Commodore fans, are you ready? It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast on the 440 Sports Network. Keep it locked right here for the best Vanderbilt coverage. Whether it's Clark Lee on the gridiron, Mark Byington and Shea Ralph on the hardwood, or Tim Corbin on the diamond, the Vandy247 crew has you covered. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Also, like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free and easy to do. Follow the crew on Twitter, Apple Podcast, and Spotify for podcast episodes. Lastly, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And now, pull up a chair. It's time for another episode of the Vandy247 podcast.
Welcome into Vandy247 Live. Good morning, Vandy fans, on a Tuesday, a chilly Tuesday morning here in Nashville. Got a big show for you today. We're going to be joined by Willy Daunic from 102.5 The Game. You can hear him weekdays right there during lunchtime, 11 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon there on 102.5 The Game. You can also hear and watch him there on the TV broadcast for the Predators on the FanDuel Sports Network for a good bit of their home games, most of their home games, and a lot of the road games as well. But more importantly, he's a former Vanderbilt basketball and baseball player, Vanderbilt alum, so he loves the black and gold. He bleeds black and gold, so I really wanted to get Willy on to talk about how exciting this basketball season has been for him, and you know, he's confident. Yeah, he's confident about their tournament chances, so we're going to kick it off with an interview with Willy Daunic, and then we'll wrap it up. This could be a longer episode, but we'll wrap it up with Joey Dwyer. We'll talk basketball, a little bit of baseball over the weekend, especially what Joey and I saw down there in Phoenix. And of course, the baseball team has a matchup against Air Force, game 2 of a two-game series there. Obviously, Vanderbilt knocked down Air Force yesterday 3-1. They used 4 pitchers. J.D. Rogers had a home run. Austin Nye pitched pretty well. He got the start. So Vanderbilt had to survive yesterday in the cold. And Corbin mentioned after the game yesterday they didn't get back until about 2 a.m. from Phoenix. And a lot of guys had class in the morning, so they had to get up for class. And then they had to likely get out there and hit BP, get out there about lunchtime or so, 1 o'clock. So tough game yesterday for Vanderbilt. Obviously, you know, that's a game, you know, you need to win, and they got it done. They did just enough to get it done, 3-1 yesterday over Air Force. They'll play again today at 1 o'clock. You can watch that on ESPN Plus, also hear it on 94.9 The Fan. But the focus of today will be basketball, and basketball season is brought to you by the Wash House. Are you dreading laundry day? Is it stealing time to do the things that you truly enjoy? Well, let the professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you. They've got 2 locations in Nashville. Just drop off your dirty laundry, and their professional attendants can give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, and clean laundry, ready to be put away. Log on to washhouseclean.com or stop in today and get your time back. According to Jerry Palm of CBS Sports, Vanderbilt still remains safely in the NCAA tournament field. So that's good news. Same thing basically with Joe Lunardi. Maybe not as safe with Joe Lunardi, but still really, really safe. Hunter, no, I was not out in the cold yesterday. So and I'm I'm happy about that. Not able to go today either. I'll be making some trips eventually. But we're going to kick it off here with Willy Daunic. Again, he loves the black and gold and talked a lot of Vanderbilt basketball. So we're going to kick it on over to Willy Daunic. Willy, I want to start with basketball. Obviously, former Vandy basketball baseball player. Now you're with the Nashville Predators, play-by-play for. Is it the FanDuel Sports Network? Is that?
Yep, that's what we're calling it now. Yep, that's for sure.
I love it. I can't say I would have ever thought it'd be called that, but it's I love it. But also co-host of DVD on 102.5 The Game, 11 to 2 p.m., 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Willy, let's start basketball and just broadly here. I know we may have talked right when Byington was hired or you know when the decision was made, but with the SEC play they've got 5-6 games left here. What have been your overall impressions of this team, and how does it feel as an alum and someone that cares about Vanderbilt basketball to have a respectable product back inside Memorial Gym for really, and not just respectable, a tournament level product for the first time really since 2015, 2016?
Yeah, I first of all, the energy was immediate. I think that you could see from Mark Byington. Fantastic. And I was really rooting for Jerry Stackhouse and his crew to do well. But you can see a difference. Like I really thought the team 2 years ago deserved to be in the NCAA tournament. I really, and I'm sure we'll talk about where this Vanderbilt team sits right now, because their ratings are right in the mix, right? It's every year's different, but I think it's really evolved how the tournament committee selects these teams now. And like I said, 2 years ago, I thought they had a little bad luck with the injuries and still deserve to get in. But it is so much fun to watch this particular team play because of the instant way that they have all fit together. They have that sort of tough underdog mentality every time they take the court. And I just love how they battle and play together.
Willie, what have you noticed? I know you just talked about their toughness, but what else has surprised you about this group? Because to me, like you just said, that their cohesiveness, I mean, it looked like they had been playing for a while already, but when in reality, they hopped on the floor with each other after playing at all different schools, basically. And they competed, but, to me, it was surprising how much chemistry they had. And you hear Edwards talk about after games that, they're fighters and they love each other. I mean, that surprised me a little bit that, man, this team gelled quicker than I think a lot of people might have expected.
And I give the players so much credit for that, to be able to come in and be unselfish and play for each other immediately when they didn't know each other at all. And you had one player in Jalen Carey who was familiar with the coach at all. That's something I don't think even in his best case scenario, Mark Byington could have envisioned. But where I give Byington all the credit is he was able to go out and get a whole new team, but also visualize how the pieces would fit. I think in a perfect world, he'd have another big man, right? That's the weakness on the team. That's probably why they've come up short in a couple of games, is because they just are a little thin up front, but they've done a tremendous job overcoming it. But I really like how he was able to bring guys in and basically say, here's where I think the pieces can fit, and they can go a little bit smaller. The other thing that I think this team does really well that I'm impressed with is they don't have shot blockers, but on defense, they probably have the best on-ball defense that I've seen a Vanderbilt team have. The way they really pressure the passer, they get steals on the perimeter. They're really good at digging in the paint when a team drives. So instead of getting block shots, they're going to try to get several strips of the ball in the paint, and they turn it around to get some fast break opportunities. That's a pretty unique style of defense, and it's been successful for them.
I'm with you on that, and I didn't know coming in. I mean, I watched some film of Byington and his Madison teams in the past, and you saw that. You saw a lot of the digging. You saw a lot of pokes and wide open layups, and they create chaos a little bit with their defense. And you even go back to some Shaka Smart VCU teams, and that is what this Vanderbilt team looks like. But Willie, to me, if they weren't such a good turnover forcing team and grabbing steals left and right, they probably fall behind the eight ball. If that's not one, that's their trait really, creating turnovers and getting out in transition. And you got Edwards to shoot it. You've got Hogard to penetrate. You've got Nickel as well. But man, I'm thinking if that isn't their style of play, I think they're probably struggling a little bit right now just because of how small they are inside and how limited they are there. That has won them some games. That they're the havoc they've created on the defensive side. Yeah,
I think that's out of necessity as much as anything, because on the flip side, as you said, there's some matchup issues that they have to deal with against elite teams. And let's always keep in mind how tough their schedule is and how they're just not playing really good teams. They're playing national title contender teams so often. We saw how much they dominated in the pre-conference when they were playing teams a little more mortal. So I think they really get after it on defense. They do gamble, and they're making the calculated decisions. They have to get a certain amount of turnovers to be effective. And I think they've also fallen victim a few times. And I think the second half in Florida, the second half at Kentucky, and the second half at Auburn or at home against Auburn, they caught those teams. They forced them to make shots, but all three of those teams were lights out, especially from the outside. But when you gamble and you don't get the steal, you are going to give up some open looks. And to those teams' credit, they made the most of them. But I'm hoping that between now and the end of the season, there are enough nights where you're getting the turnovers, and hopefully you're catching a really good team where they're not lights out from the outside. They have a little bit of a cold shooting day or night. Let's hope it happens tomorrow at Rupp Arena. You can't, probability isn't great of that, but you never know. That they could use one more big game win, and on the road, I think it would go a long, long way to sealing a berth in the tournament.
Well, and that's what I want to get at right now. If you look at Lenardi's bracketology, I think he's got him as a 10 seed. Jerry Palm of CBS is a little bit higher on Vanderbilt. Actually, I've seen them as a 9 seed. I can't remember if he still has them as a 9 seed or not. But with where they're at in the bubble, Willie, and the upcoming schedule, like you just hinted at, you got Kentucky at Rupp Arena tomorrow night. You got Ole Miss Saturday, which you probably need to win that. Now, you've got opportunities. Like, if you don't beat Ole Miss at home, you've got opportunities up and down the schedule for 3 more wins. You've got Missouri at home again. Obviously they lost in Columbia. You got Arkansas at home as well. But how do you feel right now about their tournament chances? I know it can change. If they beat Kentucky tomorrow, you're probably feeling really good. But right now, how do you feel about their chances?
I always say this when we're talking about it. When you see the daily stuff on the brackets, which come out every day, and now we're going to start as we get closer to March, as you know, Billy, every half of games, there's going to be a new update and guys are going to slide around. So yeah, when you're in the position Vanderbilt's in, you can't get caught up with that. And the worst thing you can do is sit there and say, oh yeah, they're in. They're a 9 seed or a 10 seed on a particular day, because that's what's dangerous. That's what can get you complacent, because the reality is, until you have, in my estimation, 3 more wins, and I think it could be really any 3 games between now and the end of the regular season, you can't say that you're in, because as you just pointed out, I don't know, there's not a single game on the schedule between now and the end of the year where you're circling and saying they should win that. They're going to be an underdog in probably virtually all of those games, maybe with the exception of one. If they win the next 3 or something like that, that could change. But the bottom line is, every game you're going to have to work and play great basketball to win. So 3, I think, would do it. So that's what I look at. I don't look at the Lunardi and say, well, they're okay because they're on the right side of the bubble now. It's, where are the 3 wins? Find the 3 wins, and then you can breathe a little bit easier. And I think even two would not knock you out. If they're 7-11 going into the SEC tournament, I don't think by any means that means they will be out, but you are then getting into some really treacherous waters, and you are going to be relying on what happens in other leagues, I think, at that point.
And you don't want to do that. I mean, look, you just mentioned Vandy fans have been there before, just a couple of years ago. But the difference, obviously, is the non-conference this year, right? That year, 2 years ago, Willie, I forget who all they lost to, but they lost some.
That's where they lost it 2 years ago,
yeah.
Right? It's they had some bad losses. And what we've learned about the net is the margin of victory is important, right? And I don't know if I like that. But your efficiency is being factored in now, and it's not as much of a did they get it done or not get it done. For example, I think the biggest dip that they had that I saw in the net was when they got blasted at Oklahoma. When you lose by 30, and remember that team 2 years ago that was right on the bubble, a lot was made of, I think they lost by 40 at Alabama. That didn't help at all. So margin of victory comes into play. If you notice, coaches do not clear their bench, which would have stunk when I was playing, Billy, because when some games got, 10, 15 points, we're up or we're down, Daunic's in there the last couple minutes. You get a couple extra shots up there. That doesn't happen anymore. Like Auburn, I was at that game. Both teams playing the starters all the way to the end, even though Auburn was, they were up by 10, 12. They were going to win the game, but both teams were conscious of not letting the score get out of control one way or the other.
Well, the other thing that's interesting too is, and Byington talked about it after one of these games, where in their net ranking, they're moving up after some of these these losses too, right? Now after wins, right, they may move up. Yeah, like after Tennessee, I think they're at 41 now in the net. They had been up at 43, 40. They've slowly been creeping because of their schedule. So they'll be a top 35, high 30s net team. And if you get to 3 SEC wins, you'll be at 20. They're not leaving them out. Right? You're not leaving an SEC team out in this SEC. But what I'm wondering, Willie, is if they're at 7-11 going into the SEC tournament, can they is the committee looking at that going, okay, we need not a win on Wednesday. We're looking for a win Thursday out of this Vandy team, and you'll be good. I don't know. Again, you can't rely on that. But if any year in the SEC, this tournament should matter, but it just hasn't really in the past. And I've asked this to a lot of people, and they've kind of said the same thing. I don't know. You don't know. So, but I mean, surely, if any year, that's got to matter this year. Whereas, like I said, if Vanderbilt's at 7-11, now Byington's probably not sitting here saying this, but I know there's some fans saying that the tournament should matter this year, especially for a lot of those bubble teams. Well,
everybody says that, and I can't figure it out either. I do think that the tournament should matter in my mind. I am a believer, and they're adamant that they don't do this, but I am a believer that how you're playing at the end of the year should factor in. But it doesn't seem like the committee wants to go there at all. They want to weigh games in November and December the same way as they do in late February or early March, which I'm not sure I agree with the philosophy there. And so what I would say, Billy, is the margin of victory to try to hold that spot in the net is going to be important. If it's like it was 2 years ago, that was the thing that was most frustrating to Vanderbilt fans. When they started playing well, and they had some great wins, even when Liam Robbins got hurt, their net didn't move at all. Their net was so locked in the 70s or wherever it was that all of the other metrics were good. Like all of the old things that the committee used to put some weight on didn't move the needle at all. And that was really disappointing to me. So I'm hoping that this is the turnaround because, like you said, their ratings are good right now. And even though they've lost the last 2 games, because they played well in both of those games, and they played very well at Florida, their net has held solid in that 40 range, which is really where you want to be. That's a pretty good net rating, but they do need a few more W's to go with it.
Well, and you wonder how much eye test matters too. I mean, you could look at, watch.
I thought the eye test meant nothing 2 years ago. Honestly, I was so frustrated with that, and I spent way too much time sitting there doing all the math and looking at the teams that got in and who they beat. And then the eye test should have been the easy one to look at, the way that Vanderbilt was playing late, but it really meant nothing. I couldn't believe it when they were not even in the first 4 out. So I do think it's important to keep in mind that the whole net ranking thing is different than it was, and
that's what matters.
After, right, CM Newton, who used to be the tournament chair for a long time, he was a guy that I think influenced a lot of committee members after he was done doing it. I think the eye test mattered a lot more back in those days than it does now. The people that are on that committee now, I think there's a lot of people that really aren't even basketball people on there. They're not former coaches. So they're not putting a premium on that. It's much safer just to look at the numbers and go down the net. That's my opinion of how I've seen it get done. And to me, that's wrong. But let's hope it works in Vanderbilt's favor this time.
Yeah, but we'll see, man. It's going to be interesting to see what happens here down the stretch with this team. I do want to hit baseball before I let you go, Willie. This team, this program, right, is in an interesting spot. We talked about it before we got on here. In this era, Tim Corbin hasn't shown a ton of interest in investing into the portal until this past offseason, really. You bring in a guy like Riley Nelson who comes in and hits a grand slam for you on Sunday. You've got a couple other transfers, Mike Mancini from James Madison, who's actually hurt right now. You've got some young talent, but you got some portal players more than they've had. And that's not the only thing with this program, right? They've made some coaching changes as well, which, many people believe were needed, and you needed a new energy. So with that, what are you expecting from this year's club, and how do you look at the VandyBoys program as a whole? Because I think a lot of people like to overreact and say, well, they're not the same elite program anymore. That looks, it looks true at times, but at the same time, they also won the SEC tournament just a couple of years ago and hosted a regional. So they're not far off. But how do you look at where this program is at right now?
I think there's no doubt that Tim Corbin is having to adapt from the formula that worked so well for so long because of just how radically and rapidly the system has changed. I mean, we just got done talking about basketball. The guy, Mark Byington, comes in and has literally a brand new team, and you see how different it can be. They were predicted 16th in the league, and there's no way you can even make a prediction. I think all sports are becoming like that, and baseball might even be more random than the other sports that we saw. We saw Clark Lee turn over his roster. What did he have, 50 new players or something like that? So baseball, what does Tim Corbin want to do? And he believes in the model, and I think he enjoys the teaching part and the building part of taking kids out of high school and molding them, taking talented kids, molding them, developing them, getting a degree, staying, the experience of being on the Vanderbilt campus. But we know in college now that's just not how they roll. That's not how college kids go now. We've got the money in there. We've got the ability. If I'm not the starting player at second, if I'm a second baseman and I'm behind another second baseman, I don't care if you're at Vanderbilt, at Austin Peay, at Southern Cal, or at Ohio State, you're probably looking to go somewhere else that needs a second baseman, right? And that's just what's happening. And the baseball, especially with the specialized positions, is really tough. And so Tim Corbin, I think, reluctantly has to be in that game, and he's starting to do it. But I think it might take a few more years, really, to let the formula shake out on how he wants to balance it. Because I still think he will have an advantage because he's such a good recruiter. He still will be able to attract a lot of really good elite high school players. The problem is when you come into the SEC and you're 18 or 19 years, most people, I guess, would be 19 by the time the season starts, your freshman year, playing against 22, 23-year-old guys. You're 4 years younger. You are, I don't care how talented you are, you could be a first-round pick, and it is going to be a rough year. It's not as easy as it was because not only are the older players older, they're likely much more refined. They may have changed addresses. They're better because they've had to fight their way. Like, for example, I know that there's plenty of programs in the SEC that have 55, 65, 70 players in the fall trying out. So those coaches are going to find a good 21, 22-year-old second baseman or, pick a position, right? So there's a higher level of player at every position than there was probably 5 years ago. And it's not the best thing for the kids. There's a lot of losers in that, right? They go to one school in the fall, they don't win the job that they're trying to get, and now they got to go scramble and find somewhere else to play. It's a crazy system. It's not a good system, but Vanderbilt's got to find their place in that system. So all that to say, I don't know that this is going to be a dominant Vanderbilt team, but give them time to figure out how all this is going to shake out. Because I think the players across the country aren't really going to like how this is going after a few more years of this madness.
Man, I'm with you. That was a good breakdown on what's all going on right now, especially at the baseball level. We'll see what happens. They've got another one today, actually, 1:00 against Air Force. So we'll see about that. But
that was an interesting game last night. I can relate as a guy who travels with the Predators. That Vanderbilt team came back from Arizona after a knockdown dragout 3 games, right? They have a wild one on Sunday where they got to use a lot of pitchers. They win. They jump a plane. They got back at like 1:00 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And because of the weather situation here, all of a sudden the guys wake up. I don't know what time they woke up. Hopefully they got sleeping a little bit, but some of them probably had class at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. And they get a text probably saying, we've got a game this afternoon. So that was a really, really tough turnaround. So that was not an easy game to find a way to win. They didn't play great yesterday, but I was impressed that they found a way to win that one.
Yeah, gutted it out 3-1, and they'll play again today against Air Force, a pesky Air Force team. So we'll see what happens. But Willy, really appreciate it. That was awesome. I know fans are going to enjoy that if they haven't listened already live, but really appreciate it. Good luck with the Preds here down the stretch. 4 Nations was awesome.
Yeah, and it's not over yet. The Thursday's going to be.
Oh yeah, still.
Do
you think it's going to be? Do you think Thursday's going to be as nuts as Saturday night was?
I don't think it could possibly be as nuts at the beginning, but I think it's going to be a great game. I think the USA, they've got a couple of key guys banged up. Hopefully they'll be all right by Thursday, but that is going to be great theater. So it's on ESPN. I don't know, because it's not on ABC. I'm wondering what the audience will be, but it's going to be must-watch TV for sure.
Can't wait. And Wednesday night too, Vandy at Rupp Arena as well. So got some games to watch. We'll see. Willy, really appreciate it.
All right, Billy, anytime.
That's Willy Daunic, the one of the most diehard Vanderbilt fans that I know. Of course, former basketball and baseball player on West End, and he's doing TV for the Nashville Predators now, as well as some midday radio on 102.5 The Game. So does a really good job, and knows his Vandy stuff. So looking forward to it this week with Vanderbilt and Kentucky on Wednesday night at Rupp Arena, tomorrow night. And then you got baseball today at 1:00 against Air Force. And you've also got a big game at home on Saturday against Ole Miss. I know I said Joey Dwyer would be coming on, but I've got some stuff to do, and we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We'll get Joey on tomorrow. But, thanks for joining, everybody. And that's another Vandy 247 Live.